I'm Kim Sleezer, president of Triple Ripple Group. I am honored to be here today with four great individuals that dominate the market in Latin America regarding iGaming. I'd like to introduce first and foremost Enrique Romero, who's the head of marketing for Big Bola in Mexico. Sebastian Salazar, who's the general manager for Stellar Bet in Chile. Alex Lees, chief executive officer for ProdNet Gaming, based out of London. And Gonzalo Perez, CEO and partner of Apuesta Total. We have with us a great audience and a great opportunity to really create a great voice of everything that is going on in Latin America, especially, to say this last recently few months, and as we look forward, things that should be developing, exciting developments over the next couple of months. So to put it in context, before we get to the panel and the questions, I'd like to basically, just help the audience to create the framework. Latin America recently, if in the news, there's a lot of conversation regarding being the sleeping giant or the next big market. And the reality is that it's a giant, but it's not sleeping anymore. Just like the who's who of gaming is literally in one way or another creating a footprint in Latin America. We have Entain in the market, FanDuel, 888, William Hill, Bet365. We have Betson, SG Digital, ProNet is here, Sporting Tech is here. Just like, and we also have a lot of homegrown footprint from B2C operators, just like Caliente, Big Bola, and Estrendos in Mexico. We have WPlay and Betfair in Colombia, BetPlay in Colombia, Apuesta Total and Incabet in Peru, BetWarrior in Argentina, and we have BetCris, although based out of Costa Rica, is creating a very massive footprint throughout Latin America. Having said that, all of the attention seems to be in the United States, and effectively so. It's the number one market, is growing, and is expected to grow at a 27% compounded average growth rate over the next 3 or 4 years. But Latin America is expected to grow up to 20% on a compounded average growth rate over the next 2-3 years as well. So it is the second market in the global perspective. So with that being said, I believe that we have very dynamic, very strategic, very profound questions that we have for the audience that I believe that will create a great appreciation of what's going on with Latin America. So with that said, just like while all of this is going on in the region, right? The natural question would be, just like, is the region saturated, right? Or is there still room for growth in Latin America, right? And if so, what are the drivers? So phrasing it that way, I'd like to ask Alex, specifically what his views are on this specific topic.
Sure. Okay. Well, thank you for the question, first of all, Kim. Yeah, a very, very interesting point. Isn't it funny that we're talking about whether the market is saturated now when only maybe like a year ago, everyone's saying it's like the sleeping giant and the emerging market. And I think that kind of shows how far things have come. I think my answer, possibly a bit of a cop out. I think it depends on which country you're actually looking at. So I would argue, for example, the most advanced one at the moment in terms of regulation, which is Colombia, in my opinion. Now there's over 20 licensed operators in there now. You've got some of the major UK and European brands having entered the market, some organically, some by way of acquisition. And I think that, if you were thinking about starting out in that market, there's possibly a view that they actually might have missed the boat really in terms of securing a significant market share. I know obviously in markets like Spain, for example, there's over 80 licensed operators, but obviously the sort of majority of the market share is going to be taken up by a small number of major players. So I don't think it's quite there yet in Colombia, but I think again actually with Colombia, given that retail and the retail payment stuff is so important, it's almost a sort of extra edge, I think, that the early movers have actually managed to sort of take advantage of. And I guess it's kind of in the same respect in Peru, for example, some of the entrants over there in the market, they've taken a kind of early mover advantage in regards to retail, for example. They've actually got that experience now on the ground. But obviously, like in other countries, there's much more room. I would still argue that the Mexican market is certainly ripe, for entry, albeit as I'm sure Enrique will cover off, there's been a lot more players in sort of recent years to add on to the Goliath that is, Caliente. I think they've got more of a run for their money now. And across other countries, in the likes of Brazil, for example, obviously huge potential. Same in Chile. Other markets like kind of Argentina, it's just a bit more difficult. So obviously we know now that Buenos Aires province has issued its maximum number of 7 licenses. So that's a market that you can't get into. A very woolly and slightly vague answer to your question, actually, but it is really about, individual countries. And I think it almost goes to show, doesn't it, that any operator that tries to treat the region as just one is going to get it very, very wrong.
I think and that is great, Alex. It's a great point. I mean, just like it's great to clarify. From when you look at Latin America from the outside looking in, it's really easy to mistake it as a region, right? As a cookie cutter approach, it applies to all. And as you specifically said, obviously not, right? I mean, just like, speaking of the saturation or those opportunities, or how to enter or create a footprint in Latin America, I'd like to ask Enrique how his view is specifically in the Mexican market, regarding whether it's saturated or is not. Is it in a way of being maturing, or is it an emerging market? What's your opinion, Enrique?
Well, first of all, thank you for welcoming, Kim. Look, the Mexican market is, as Alex mentioned it, is a particular market. Also Colombia, but in terms of how many operators you have in the table and how big is the offer for the users, I can mention you that now it's happening something very funny in the Mexican market. We have big companies, we have big budgets, but we don't have big increase of their numbers. They are trying to conquer the market, fighting with Caliente, but I don't know why the users are not going to taste their platforms and their services. In my point of view, this is happening because of Caliente has the control of the media companies in terms of advertising. And when you have this kind of big monsters dominating your market, it's pretty hard. Maybe it's not saturated, but it will be in the next 5 years, I guess, depending of the investment that the operators will try to put in the route,
Okay, well, and you bring up 2 interesting points. No, one of them is the cost, the acquisition cost, right? The player acquisition cost. That, if I understand you correctly, it could be very, very high, right? If you're having to spend a lot of marketing dollars and basically have a very low conversion rate, right? So that's one point. But it brings me to another reflection to where, and you mentioned Caliente, right? Caliente is the giant, is the local, is Mexican grown, just like it's in the competition, or most of the competition is not. Do you see the competition that is trying to do this doing something differently? I mean, is there a cultural barrier? Is there a strategic lack of understanding of customer behaviors in Mexico that Caliente gets it, but these other operators don't?
Basically, Caliente has the advantage in the Mexican market. They came before, they launched before, they are in the minds of the Mexicans since a lot of time. They have land-based casinos. And if you want to fight with them, you need to create something similar. They are the only one that could be, I don't know, call it omni-channel in Mexico. Even when they don't have a single wallet, they have the land-based casinos. They have very good services in terms of online. They have odds for specific markets that another operator doesn't have. They are pretty updated in terms of figures and statistics and I don't know, everything. They have a very good product, but I guess this is part of the growing of the Mexican market.
That sounds like a great and eventually follow up questions, just like, or even forums, where we can exploit it further, as it is very, very interesting, right? It's a big market, has a lot of opportunity, but obviously there is some lessons learned as well as growing pains on how to go about it. I want to direct the same question to Sebastian, being that he's in Chile, and obviously, just like it's a very interesting market. It's a big market as well, with a lot of potential, with a lot of interest from a lot of big groups. And I would like to hear, your opinion, Sebastian, of what you think the Chile market is, now, and how the outlook is moving forward.
Hello to all the colleagues. Well, the situation in Chile and the region is has received a lot of interest in recent years, right? We all agree about this, especially during the pandemic. However, it's still an immature region, and in Chile happens the same about this immature situation. We have here operating Betson, Coolbet, and other platforms. Incabet is here too with the Roja, but probably in Colombia, Mexico, and perhaps Peru could be the countries with the most complete offer in the same page that says Alex first and Kike right now. But I think that we can create new offers with product who interpret like the local customer wants to have to use, and that I think is the real issue with new operations. I don't know if in Mexico could be the same. I know that the problems that Kike put in the table, but in Chile you don't have this situation. Right now is opening Betano, the Greeks one, and I am more in the line that we have a lot of space to grow in Chile for two reasons mainly. One is the penetration of the mobile services and the new incorporation of customers to use the mobile services. That is one. And we are a country with pretty conservative, then the betting and the gambling is not accepted in all the communities. But this situation is changing right now, especially for the pandemic, and that is the opportunity, I think.
Okay, so in Latam, you will have different realities depending on the country and the stages those countries are. For example, if you think about Uruguay and Paraguay, they both have regulation, but only one operator is allowed to operate. Then you have Colombia, where there are no limit of operators, and they already have 17 operators with 2 players dominating the market. If we talk about Peru, according to some studies, right now there are 34 active brands. That means they're doing any type of marketing, okay? And we know that they will be coming more competitors in the following month, since we don't have a regulation and it's legal to operate. I think that there is still room in Latin, but in countries where right now there is no regulation, for example, Chile, Ecuador, or Brazil, where many international brands have been taking the risk to operate because they want to be ready when the regulation comes. So I think that regulation is a key factor, but also you will need to keep that in mind that we are in Latam, and you would like to take, or you might to take the risk to start doing something Otherwise, you might be left behind.
That leads us into the next question, right? Which is literally, just like, what is the importance of speed to market? You mentioned, obviously, just like when you're looking at Chile and you're there, just like you're realizing that there's a lot of opportunity for differentiation or customization of specific service or finding a specific niche, right? So there's also a lot of regulation, basically conversations as far as what would the end product look like, as far as for the operators to frame their investment and their landing in Chile, right? So just like how important, it's just like, you mentioned that it's important, right? But just like, I want to frame it to you and then pass it on to the rest of the panelists, how important it is once all of this context for Chile's market is established, how important is the speed to market, considering everything that you said? Just like is market share a necessity, is going into Chile, going basically full force ahead in establishing that market dominance, or does it require any other type of strategic positioning to basically stay in the market and be competitive?
It's important as long as a customer experience are not sacrificed, I think. What I mean is the client is willing to play in a platform that lacks certain providers, but I most certainly won't tolerate, for example, issues on the register or on the registration, sorry, or and I don't know, difficulties to understand the promotions or this kind of situations. I think the Chilean customer is not too sophisticated as an European customer. For that reason, I think that maybe the customer could tolerate if you don't have a provider, if you don't have a complete vertical, but you need to perform pretty well in the basically part of the experience, registration, promotions, the way or the tools that you use to communicate your experience to the clients, to the customers, and try to make something local or look like a local platform. And this includes the languages, the idioms, the customs, etc.
Okay, I'll frame the same question to Enrique for the Mexican market. Just because I think there is some similarities, but there's also some differences, and there are different opportunities as probably different pain points as well. But Enrique, tell us, just what's your viewpoint, regarding the speed to market, specifically for the Mexican market?
Well, Sebastian has a very good point. The customers are pretty different in Latin America, even when we share a language. It is happening also in Europe. Sometimes you can be connected with another countries in terms of mentality and so on, but at the end you have the different behaviors, and this is happening in Mexico, and it is costing a lot of money to the companies that try to acquire in a fast way the users. If you want to catch the big users, you need to create a very good product, and you need to create a very good atmosphere around the product. It means maybe getting sponsorship, I don't know, media deals, affiliate deals. You need to create a big platform for your final service, that is the page itself. And at the end, it means money. But if you have a big budget and a smart knowledge about your customer, it will be a waste of time and a waste of money. And if you have a big knowledge of your customer, even when you have a small amount, you can be more successful than the other ones. For instance, we have one model in Big Bola. It if you come to Mexico and you say, hey, I just want to go into the Mexican market, we will help you with a lot of things, you know, taxes, laundry money, and so on. And another providers of license are just giving you the license and forgetting you. And it is, you know, maybe all the audience will understand me, or maybe not. Es crónica de una muerte anunciada aquí.
Right, but it's interesting, yeah, just like it's the dynamics by different markets, and actually, you know, Peru is also a very interesting market. I'll get back to Mexico because I think it's a great conversation to have when we talk about partnerships, right? Because it falls right into that. But you know, Peru is a very interesting market in the sense that there's a lot of international attention, even to the point where some of these international or multinational companies are looking at Peru and actually diverting resources to come in and take a deeper look at Peru. Right? So I'm sure Gonzalo will have an interesting perspective of what it means to have this influx of international operators coming into the market, and him as a local operator, whether that's really a potential misstep for these bigger guys, or perhaps even a bigger opportunity to basically defend what a homegrown operation looks like. Right? So it'll be interesting to see and hear Gonzalo's point of view here.
You know, almost in every industry, hitting first will give you some advantage. But especially that's important in our region, because in Latam you need to build trust, and your customers might be the first time they are using electronic commerce. So building trust in this scenario might take it might be a long process. Being one of the first one in the market will also mean you will have a lower CPA than the players that are coming after you. Once you decide to enter a Latin country, you will need to know you will need to think about your footprint, you know, in order to generate trust. For example, for us, retail channel was very good for that. And premium locations, you know, are limited. So you will need to go first to rent and to be one of the first in the market in order to build that trust that I was mentioning.
From a general perspective, right, Alex, I mean, you can give us basically a deeper look or a bigger dive into generally the region from your perspective on what the importance of speed to market is.
Yeah, so I think there's obviously different drivers to sort of speed to market and different ways of defining it, right? So one, for example, could be the regulatory pressure and the pressure to find the local partner quickly. So one great example of that was Buenos Aires province. So at the time that was moving, I was at William Hill, and I think it's probably fair to say in the Latam market in general, particularly with the regulators, they only really have two speeds. Really, really slow or really, really fast. And that's kind of what happened over there. So it went really, really, really slow for ages, and they were talking about regulation. And then all of a sudden, it just rocketed forward. And then everyone was panicking, diving over there to try and make a partnership. And I think, you know, to actually touch on the point made by Enrique, you've got to be very, very careful with the partner you choose. You've got to have someone that supports you as opposed to just gets you a license and then leaves you to it, essentially. So that's a sort of pressure on the ability of any operator to be quick to get into a market. But that's more about sort of corporate due diligence and the ability to get a deal done quickly in terms of, you know, corporates and lawyers and so on and so forth. On top of that, you then also got the technical pressure. So usually actually when they're issuing licenses and they're going to issue the conditions of those licenses, they normally don't give a lot of time for the operators to prepare themselves to be compliant for that license. So that again puts pressure in regards to speed to market. Then you've got the other type of speed to market, which I guess you're seeing in the Brazilian market at the moment. So that's where you've got a lot of people now who are actually rushing in, trying to secure some brand awareness and market share before it actually officially regulates. So as you probably know, sports betting in Brazil has actually now been legal for over 2 years. Actually, it just isn't regulated yet. And initially it was quite quiet. But then in the last 12 months, there's been this rush into the market of a load of different operators, which you can see in the sponsorship of all the major Brasileirão clubs, right? So every single club over there has some kind of betting partnership or betting sponsorship. And I guess the operators who are sponsoring, they're obviously going to be reasonably confident that at the right time they will be able to secure a license. So that's almost like the other end of it. I think kind of either way, and to touch on Sebastian's point, either way, whether your pressure on speed to market is from regulation or it's from the willingness to go for an early mover advantage and capture market share, it can be to the detriment of the product. And this is what like Sebastian was saying in terms of it's easy sometimes to forget the subtleties of the user experience, making sure that you've got the latest payment services providers on the site. You're making sure that the user journeys are simple enough to enable the end user to be able to deposit and withdraw, quickly and easily. So that's another factor to consider. That's just what I've seen. As I keep on saying, every country is different and has different levers, but I think that would represent maybe two of the extremes that we've seen recently.
Perfect. I mean, you guys are all, just like a very self-aware, right? They have the great awareness of understanding what makes a successful online operation, right? I mean, I think you all coincide with the different metrics, the different drivers, the different opportunities that are out there. But at the end of the day, I mean, just like these are big markets that we're talking about, just like it's in the bigger operators that will eventually land or have landed and are looking to deploy. I mean, just like it's the investment value, right? I mean, just like is it really worth it to come in basically with a big investment wallet, if you will, to basically capture this market share? I mean, just like, or is it better to be more strategic and be more localized and basically ramp up? I mean, just like, how much is enough? Just like as far as the correct strategic approach to come in and gain that elusive, leading market share in these markets. If you want to lead into that, Alex, from a general perspective.
I guess I can give an example there, maybe of the Mexican market, if I may. I have had the pleasure to get over there and sort of travel around and see the various operators in action. And I think, like as Enrique said before, with like an operator in that market like Caliente, who has actually swallowed up so much of the media space, both in terms of sponsorship and TV and so on and so forth, that it's kind of driven the CPAs quite high, for the marketeers. And therefore, I kind of get the impression, certainly from the operators that we work with in the Mexican market, that they almost need to find a more tactical way of acquiring customers. I think to try to outspend Caliente, like you're just going to get torn apart every day, really. So you've got to find an angle, a different way of kind of acquiring the customer, and maybe find a way to do it whereby you can bring them in from the more lucrative channels with a higher player value. I would suggest. So you've got to be careful there. I think that's a good example of that sort of market.
And let me add something, Alex, and maybe Sebastian and you will agree with me. These foreign operators that want to land in Mexico or in the Latam markets in general, they need to create or develop a new team. They need to have, if you have somebody in social media, you need somebody native of the country. If you want to create, odds, you need somebody native of the country to create those odds. It will help you to create a good service, a good platform, a good web page for the user. If you don't create this kind of teams, and for instance, I remember, I don't want to mention the company, but I remember one company who used to approve and to launch the promos from UK working in the Mexican market. It is impossible. It will take you a couple. It will take you a slow chain of work. You need to have somebody land based in your country. You know, if you have business in China, you need to go to China.
Hmm.
It's the same in Latin America.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, 100%.
Yeah, well, first of all, it's very important to understand that each country in Latam is completely different. You know, even some regions in our countries are different. Therefore, you cannot have the exact same product across Latam. It's key to understand and know that knowing very well your customers so you can give them a product that is that they are comfortable with. According to the market you are reaching, you have to study if it's better to use local money, US dollars. For example, talking about the sports betting, you have to understand the more attractive markets in order um, to know when to adjust the prices, lowering margins, or maybe creating some special markets to differentiate from your competitors. If we talk about online casino, you need to know that land-based casino has a strong presence in our markets. So what you need to do is to have the same, if you want to take those customers from the land-based casino to the online channel, you might have to have the same games or maybe the same logical of those games that they have in the land-based casino. I think that money and time in tropicalization are very well spent resources.
Correct. When we're talking, in fact, I'll agree with you, Alex, as well. To where when you mentioned the cost of CPAs, right? I would say that maybe some markets, and maybe the Mexican market could be a good example, to where maybe some of these bigger companies that are probably more visible, they probably have a higher CPA because of their entrenched position of defending their marketing percentage, right? I mean, just like, but you do have other local, small, well-organized brands out there that are basically trucking along, very successful at their level. Just like and maybe they have a different viewpoint because they're able to understand more the market. They're probably more, as Sebastian mentions, to whether they understand the customer. They understand that basically how to make it more effective and how that marketing dollar can basically have most value for your investment, right? So just like, I believe there's a little bit of everything, right? I mean, just like, so it's interesting to see how that will play out, because obviously it's something to consider, when you have this big international companies coming into the region. And by all means, I mean, we welcome all of them, right? Part of generating their interest is basically it's a valuation, it's a confidence check mark, if you will, of these companies understanding how big the market is and how potentially successful a market presence in Latin America can be, right? So, speaking of that, and you mentioned it to a certain extent, Enrique, and leading into the next question, localization, right? I mean, just like it's obviously a big issue, right? From an operator perspective, from a talent perspective, and from different angles, just like Sebastian, I'll throw this question at you. Just like how important, I mean, you alluded to it earlier, but if you can expand to it now, how important is that localization and how does it look like in your case in Chile?
Thank you, Kim, for the question. I'd like to give you an approach about the experience of Stellar Bet as a new brand, a new company with 8 months in Chilean market. And to Stellar Bet, we find an opportunity supporting female team football players, right? What's a different strategy? Because the category it's in all the sports, but the only space that we find to communicate that we are a new company and we can make the things well was this little space in female. I know in Mexico you have Caliente supporting female clubs, football teams too, but to start an operation in a country like Mexico, you need to find where you can express yourself, your company, in every spaces in where where these competitors doesn't have marketing, no? About the Kim question, in my opinion, global trends point towards products with local elements always in every part of the world right now. Therefore, achieving a sense of local identity on end customers through communications is crucial. You have, in my case, trying to make this communication with the female teams of football, but you can do it with streamers about Twitch, but all these 360 ways to communicate your ideas or your website needs to connect with the website, with the promotions, with the influencers, with the TV, with programmatic. All the communications need to be I don't know how can I say congruent, align to align all these communications. That I think that happens with this situation of localize your operation.
One of the things, and you lead right into what the next question is, Sebastian. I mean, just say one of the important things in what we're seeing, I mean, just like generally globally, right, is just the changing dynamics of the industry. But in Latin America, I mean, just obviously being a new region, just like it's that has more and more exposure, as you mentioned earlier, with with mobile penetration, with cloud services, with privacy, just as cloud services and so forth. I mean, just like you have a lot going on there. We have a lot going on as far as technology and innovation and accessibility, which gives the organic local operators just like is that opportunity to be more creative and understand what is specific to the country itself, right? I mean, just like that differentiating factor. One of the things that I strongly promote, right, when we're looking at really scaling in Latin America, is partnerships, right? But Alex mentioned, you mentioned, and I'm totally, just as in concur with both of you. It's not just any partnership, right? You have to be careful in who you partner with, and vice versa, because as you just saying it, I mean, and I clearly understand it, and I fully support it, right? I mean, just like the local voice is very, very important as that element of success, right? So just like if you're looking at Latin America, I mean, just like you have a big market. We have over 10 jurisdictions now in play all over Latin America. We have a lot of stakeholders, from land-based operators, whether they're lottery operators or bingo operators or slot parlor operators that just want to jump in the game. We also have just like some B2C and content providers that want to basically be part of that ecosystem on the online gaming space. And obviously we have all the international interest to come in and basically stake a claim in the markets, right? So, I mean, walk us through a little bit from your perspective, Alex, just like on the partnership perspective, and how important is, what a successful partnership should look like, and what is the impact of that partnership?
Well, I've got some personal ties over to the region, so hopefully I can't be accused of any cultural misappropriations or what I'm about to say. But I think more so than any other region that I've been to, it relies heavily on like personal relationships and rapport with who you're dealing with, particularly face to face. And obviously that's been very, very difficult, nigh on impossible over the last 2 years, to be fair. But I mean, certainly before that, I think it's sort of trying to use your personal network really to try to actually get out and speak to as many people on the ground as you can. I mean, to actually give you one example, I mean, what I mentioned earlier about taking William Hill into the Argentinian market, we were actually played into that by one of the major casino providers who tend to be quite advanced in actually getting into new markets. So they can be quite a useful gateway. And I think kind of additionally, for the individuals who are in the corporate development teams, in the major European brands, you know, via like networks of brokers, you just start to build up a portfolio. Actually, once you've met people, you know, you kind of get a feel for it, you know, whether it's going to work or not. I think also to sort of pick up on the point that Enrique mentioned before, I think, you know, if you're trying to operate in any country in Latam in exactly the same way that you do in Europe, it's just not going to work. I think like the approach that I've always taken is to trust and leverage the strength of the local partner, you know, who has the access to the marketing channels, the social channels, and let's be honest, in certain cases, the political connections to be able to get things done. In some cases, you know, the Mexican market being a prime example of that. So I think it's almost that. It's sort of using maybe the sort of financial strength and potentially the brand value of the European brand, if that's what you're trying to do, but making sure that you allow the local team to really run with that and, you know, potentially do something different with it to be successful in that market. And, you know, if you don't trust your local team to do that, then it kind of questions why you're working with them in the first place, really. So I think that can maybe be the incorrect approach of some of the larger sort of blue chip firms in Europe, that they try to sort of force it in one way, and you know, kind of unfortunately, it doesn't always succeed.
So once you tropically stage your product, which it is crucial for your operation. From my point of view, what I think that is also very important is customer care. As I said, for many customers, this should be the first time that they're using electronic commerce. So being with them, you know, helping them, teaching them. There are people that are reaching us every day saying, "Hey, I want to bet, but I don't know how to do it." So we be like the ones who are taking the time to teach them how to do it, what process to do. For example, you need to have a credit card, or if you don't have a credit card, you might have used this deposit method. So from my point of view, what it's really crucial and what it's really important, it's all about customer care. Because yes, once you're in a country, you can have almost the same offer, but if you don't are with your customer through this process, then he might be left, you know, from the process.
And it's interesting that you mentioned that, you know, just like to the fact that, I mean, if we were to create a list, let's say, you know, say, Sebastian, you know, give me your top 3 dream partners, right? I mean, just like, it's probably too easy to make a mistake and say, you know, 1, 2, and 3 in the global perspective, right? But you may not know anything about them, right? You may not know if there's actually right synergies, whether the investment value is the same, whether the appetite is the same, whether the timing is the same, right? I mean, just like, so in reality, I mean, just like, this is a concept of buyer beware of sorts, right? I mean, just like, I believe each other's part is to do a thorough due diligence of what the intent and the purpose is of each, right? What each needs of each other, and how collectively they can actually move forward with a viable path to success, right? I mean, just like, so it's a necessity of the partnership, but it's not that simple, right? When you look at, and by my accounts, in Latin America, there's probably 75 to 100 operators within this ecosystem that could be in some form a partner to an incoming operator. But not all of them is not a pick and choose of any of those. I mean, literally, I mean, just like, you have some operators, like you well said, that will get you the door, right? I mean, just like through those relationships and those contacts, you may be able to land there, right? But on the next phase, you may not be able to execute because maybe you don't have that support that a local relationship really has, right? Or you go even further, you may not be able to be sustainable if you don't have basically that partner that is able to provide all those mechanisms for you to keep going and be successful, right? So it's a complex process. It's to understand who the right partner is, but obviously, you know, just like it's something that has a very, very high value. Sebastian, just like from your perspective, right? I mean, just like you're an organic operator, you're going on your own. I mean, just like you're growing at a certain level. You mentioned the success that you're having. I mean, just like, does it make sense for you to actually have a partner versus you understanding that you can probably scale at your pace and then be able to be successful with the vision that you have for the company?
Well, I think that there are no recipes to have the perfect mix to have or not have a partner. For us right now, it's pretty simple because we don't have partners, and that it's easy to take some ways to make the difference in your business, but sometimes make the business alone could be difficult too, and you can make bad decisions. Maybe if you are operating in your own country, a partner could be a good could be a good partnership if they apport with experience, with technology, maybe with investment to make marketing. I don't know, but in the same line that Alex says before, if you go to make this business to other country, you need to know how they are. In Spain, they said, donde fueres, haz lo que vieres. Where you go.
I mean, Rome do as the Romans do.
yeah, absolutely. But I think that you need to interpret what the customer wants in the country, in the local space. In Brazil, it's a pretty good example, and I think in Mexico too, because you have a country, a big country, 200 million people, but inside the country you have many different cultures.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You can try to expand your operation starting with a region, with a local region. I don't know, like Belo Horizonte in Minas Gerais, in Brazil. Maybe you can make an easier operation starting with a feeling about what they want in that region, not in the country. In US, it's the same.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. No, and speaking, Alex, from ProNet perspective, right? You have aspirations to obviously be, just like anywhere and everywhere possible, right? I mean, just like, and the goals are ambitious. When you look at, how that roadmap could look like, I mean, just like, just to give you a perspective, right? It's, if you have, just mixing everything that we talked here together, but if you have a potential placement, right? It's just like where you can come in a country and your B2C operator is a land-based operator that has no experience in online gaming, you're probably gonna have a difficult time deploying, going live, and even if you do go live successfully, there may be a hard time sustaining, right? Because the models are totally different, right? The business models are totally different. So, I mean, it probably makes sense, just like it's to understand how there could be some type of synergies from the local land-based operator to a possible B2C online operator, to where there could be a collection of synergies and be more successful executing, right? Or even in Sebastian's case, right? I mean, just like it's, you may have homegrown B2C operators that are just starting to, and they're probably do, plenty of missteps, miscalculations, some growing pains, maybe some added unnecessary investments. So from your perspective, when you look at, how to be successful for ProNet, it's just like, what's your vision on how to be more successful in the region?
Yeah, I mean, our core business is as a technical platform provider, right? So we're providing them with a proprietary sports book. We're providing them with all the casino providers. We have over 120 kind of integrated into the platform at the moment. And I suppose that would be all very well just to say, well, listen, if you want to go into that market, we'll give you the technical solution, we'll have all your PSPs integrated. But I think, as you correctly pointed out, and this is also due to the pandemic, of course, is that the transition actually from retail to online, which of course is probably the most common one in Latam. I think like retail has been prevalent there for some time, and the pandemic has really only sped up that process. I think, as you correctly point out, many of these operators on retail, they don't have the experience in online. Now, technically, we could be hands off and say, well, go and find a marketing team, off you go. But that's not what we're really about, actually. I think it's more about being able to add a lot more value with a much more consultative approach. And that's why we have like a managed, services team, for example. So if they want to have the platform and also the customer service and the CRM and the sportsbook and casino management and the design and the payments, risk and fraud, we can do all that for them. And like in some cases, that can end up being a permanent solution for them, and they're happy with that. In some cases, it's for a fixed period of time, whereby after a while, they actually get to learn particular parts of the business, and then they actually choose to sort of internalize that function within their own sort of organization. So I think that's the approach when it comes to local operators. When it comes to when it comes to the operators who are in Europe and Asia and further afield, for them sort of entering into the Latam market, it becomes more about the ability to use your network to introduce them to partners locally who can help them, like country managers, for example, to help run the business for them, to introduce them to media contacts, ambassadors, and so on and so forth. Also, potentially some of the more mundane stuff, but really important stuff like law firms and how you go about opening a company locally, for example. For a foreign operator going into Latam, it's all alien to them. So that tends to be our approach for those two different kinds of clients.
I really appreciate your thoughts and just and your insights. They're obviously very, very helpful. They will be tremendously helpful for our audience. And obviously, we are resources. It's in the region. We are resources globally to be able to ensure that there's ideal landing, and ideally, it's an expansive understanding on how to be successful in the market. So I believe that we have plenty to talk about. Each question and either more questions within the context of what we're discussing has been brilliant. There's an in-depth perspective, great insights from all four of you guys. And we look forward. To being here, to being a resource, to being a partner, to being a voice. And that being said, it's very glad to be part of this forum. Very glad to hear each of you, your viewpoints. Obviously, you add to everything that is the growth of Latin America. I think there's great times ahead for all of us. There's a lot of great news that will be coming out, and I look forward to that. So on behalf of iGamingFuture and on behalf of TRG, I'd like to thank all the panelists and look forward to a very successful future ahead